I got interested in Startup Grind. Again, I've only been involved since December. I was taking some business coaching courses, and as one of my assignments, I was kind of searching the web for something, came across this site. And what really grabbed me about Startup Grind is the values, and it's giving and not taking. It's really about making friendships and relationships and not just contacts. And it's doing for that other business owner, definitely before you do for yourself. And so that kind of resonated with me, and I thought, you know what, I want to do this. We've got, in our area, in the capital region, we've got a ton of networking, entrepreneurial type events, but we don't have anything that's quite like this. We have things where you can go, chamber events, you can exchange business cards, you can meet some folks, but we don't really have a forum where entrepreneurs, or wannabe-preneurs as I like to call them, people who may be in the discovery stage, people who are still thinking about a business, want to have a business, or people who actually have a business and maybe want to scale their business up. There isn't a place where you can go and sit and listen and learn from those people who are already making it happen. So having said all that, I just want you to help me. We have a Startup Grind tradition where I'm going to ask you all to just stand and clap and help me to greet our guest for this evening, Mr. Walt Borisenok, who's like ready to walk out the door.
All right, great, thank you. Good to be here.
I love you because you are just like, okay, let's just get this going. So, you know, as I said, I started in December, and I am such the not going to reinvent the wheel person. And when I was interested in Startup Grind, getting Startup Grind, bringing it to the Albany area, I wanted to know what was going on in terms of entrepreneurship in our area. So I began, I have a research background, I have a broadcast background, and so I began to search the internet, and I came across the RPI Boss event. And I saw this beautiful website that actually resembled the Startup Grind website. You see faces, you can kind of click on the faces, and you probably don't even know that, and just find out about the different people. And I thought, this is kind of neat. And this is kind of great because I can just search through these people and find the interesting people that I want to talk to. The work's already been done for me. And I began to develop a wish list. And on that wish list, your name was there. So there were 4 or 5 other people that I thought, I really want to talk to these people because they were interesting. I live in Schenectady. I loved what I read about your story. You are a homegrown, as I like to call it, Schenectady company who kind of raised things up in Schenectady. And then I had the opportunity, I wasn't able to make the Boss event, but a girlfriend of mine, Karen, was able to make the Boss event. And she, you know, I talked to her after, I said, okay, so who'd you meet who was interesting? Who really kind of captivated you? Which, based on the fact that that event was small pockets of time, your name came up, and I'm looking, I said, that's, you know, this guy's on my list. And so she said he was great, you know, and just said some things about you that kind of reinforced my desire to have an opportunity to really just kind of let you tell your story. I know that you have gotten a lot of press coverage, I think generally speaking, but especially in the last year, you've got a lot of press coverage about Fortitech, and you know, you're the co-founder and former president of Fortitech and still doing some consulting. So, but I wanted to see if we could kind of pull out a little bit of some of the stuff that's already out there, but also just, you know, bring a little freshness to what's going on. So I just, again, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come in and hang out with us at Startup Grind.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I guess I'll start at the beginning, and I'll say, talk about your childhood. Were you a child or a kid who just said, you know, I absolutely know what I want to be when I grow up?
Yeah, no, actually just the opposite. To tell you the truth, I was a kid that, you know, I mean, I wasn't a good student, you know. I mean, I think, I'll tell you, back then, before they knew what attention disorder was, I probably had it. Like, you know, I mean, you know, sitting in class, I wasn't really too good sitting in class.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, I never really excelled in school, you know, so, and then, like, you know, we basically, my families, you know, and we talked a little about this, you know, my grandparents had a bunch of little small businesses, like, you know, I mean, they sold Christmas trees, like, you know, we'd sell like 500 Christmas trees a year. We sell pumpkins, we'd sell memorial wreaths, you know, we do all that stuff. So, of course, like, you know, we were the grandkids, so we were like the free labor that would get involved with this. Like, you know, the scary part is the free labor, you know, I'll tell you, it lasted until I think I was 20-something years old, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, you know, we're still running this stuff. Like, you know. Yeah, so I mean, and, you know, and actually, I mean, I think some of my interest in business kind of got piqued by by doing that, believe it or not. Like, you know what I'm saying? And you know, I mean, you know, they, you know, and I'll tell you what, my grandparents were great people, but I mean, you know, they weren't always the best business people. You know, I mean, like I look back now and go, boy, like, you know, I'll tell you what, you know, like I actually learned a lot what not to do. You know what I'm saying? Okay. You know what I'm saying? Okay. I mean, it was kind of, I mean, you know, they were all right, but I mean, there was some crazy stuff that used to go on in some of these businesses, like, you know, so. But you know, that was it. And then, like, you know, Shaker High School, just, you know, went through Shaker. You know, I got accepted in one school, SUNY Plattsburgh. That was it. You know what I'm saying? Okay. You know. So there was no list, and there was one, so didn't have to really go around the schools and see which one I wanted. I went to Plattsburgh, like, you know, so yeah, and then, you know, graduated out of there.
So you actually grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. You kind of watched that happening.
Well, yeah.
And I think when we...
Well, you know, I'll tell you what, my grandparents were. My father, okay, basically, he went to RPI, okay, and, you know, I'll tell you, he worked for the same company for 32 years.
Sure,
okay,
sure.
Sterling Drug. So, like, you know, again, you know, he was also in, you know, part of the labor pool that was part of my grandparents. But, I mean, seriously, he did the free labor pool till he was about 60. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so I give him credit. At the end, I go to 20. But, yeah, but no, you know, I'll tell you, he worked. He was a research pharmacist. Like, you know what I'm saying?
So you have that, you could see that entrepreneurial in your family, but then your dad took he took the traditional job situation.
Oh, yeah,
so it's almost like it skipped a generation that own your own business. But you reached a place where you went to school, you got into a company, so you saw that whole continuum as being an employee, and then at one point you did something which I keep seeming to hear entrepreneurs. You saw an opportunity. You were working. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I'll tell you the truth. Like, I always wanted to start a business. Sure. You know, so even when I was working, I was like, geez, you know, maybe I want to start a business. Maybe I want to start a business. I'll tell you the truth. I was even looking at hardware stores, okay, while I was working for this company, okay, which was a German baby food company. They bought the Beach Nut cereal plant out in Canada area, and I was manager of quality assurance, okay. But even during that, I was like looking at businesses, trying to start a business. And then, you know, I'll tell you, one day I realized that the types of products that we currently sell, which are these blends of nutrients that go into food fortification, I'll tell you, we were trying to buy these when I was working for this company, okay, for infant formulas, medical foods, baby cereals, and I'll tell you that I would be involved with these people that were vendors trying to sell us this, and we're just having a tough time getting it. You know, I'll tell you, we couldn't get the quality, we couldn't get the right products as far as the specification and the variety of them. So, you know, when you're 28 years old and you say, well, you know, I'll tell you, this might be the opportunity right here. Like, you know, I was like, geez, you know, maybe there's a business for this. Like, you know, so that's when I quit my job.
And you started your own idea. And you know, we talked about this in, a little bit, the journey that you took. There always seems to be, the more entrepreneurs or business owners or startup founders that I talk to, there seems to be a common theme. You get this idea, you see an opportunity, you make the leap, and then you find out there's some surprising things once you make that leap.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like, you know, I mean, just the whole period of time to get going. I mean, I tell you the truth, I left, let's see, I'll tell you, Malupa, December of 1985, okay, and it took a year to write a business plan, so I never wrote a business plan, like, you know, because I was a microbiologist. That's what I graduated from Plattsburgh with, like, you know, so I did study a little bit, but the reason why side note, the reason why I took microbiology is because there's a class called food microbiology, and I'll tell you, went to the Molson plant up in Canada. So I was a liberal arts major, so I took this one class, and I said, okay, hey, you know, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll go into fermentation, and so, yeah, seriously, that's why I ended up to be this microbiologist. Like, you know, I got 2.0, but I got out of it. So in any event, yeah, so I left. It took me a year to write a business plan. I tell you, I moved into a studio apartment that's probably about this square right here, you know, me and the wife, like, you know, and, you know, basically got that done after a year, and I worked with a couple of guys also at the SUNY development program over there. They had small business development, you know, so they kind of gave me some type of direction on putting a plan together. Okay. And once I got it together, I said, okay, well, now I'm good to go, and now I'm going to go launch, I'm going to get some money, I'll go to the bank, and there was tons of development people back then, actually more than there is now. These counties, even little towns, sure, had regional money going and stuff like that. So I go, yeah, no problem. I'm going to march out there and I tell you, I'm going to get some money and
Sure.
I'm going to start. Well, obviously.
Sounds like it should be.
Yeah, sounds like a plan, but that plan didn't quite go as planned, like, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, but there was one guy, okay, a guy named George Robertson, who was head of Schenectady Economic Development Corporation. I made an appointment, and I basically sitting over at his office, and the guy next to me, okay, there was two of us in there, like, you know, and he had his business plan, and I tell you, I had my business plan, like, you know, and I tell you, we're talking back and forth, his secretary's there, and I'll tell you, his name was Angelo Mazzone, okay, and basically, yeah, okay, and I'll tell you what, he was trying to buy the Glenn Sanders Mansion, his first business, you know, he was trying to buy. So we're talking back and forth, and you know, secretary comes and goes, I'll tell you, who wants to go first? He goes, I'll tell you, you go first. I go, okay, I'll go first, you know, so I go first. Anyway, I'll tell you, we've been friends now for 27 years, like, you know, since that day. So I go into George, and, you know, he had a copy of the business plan, you know, I sent it to him at the time, and, you know, he ripped the thing apart. I mean, he ripped this thing like no tomorrow, okay? Everything was wrong with it, no this, no that, everything. I'm just sitting there going, oh, man. You know, like, I can't even get a break out of here, like, you know. And we get all done after it gets done ripping, and I figured that, okay, well, I'm done here, I gotta go find something else here. And he goes to me, well, he goes, listen, here's what I'll do. You bring me one letter from one company that says that they'll buy this stuff, okay? Then I'll tell you, we'll come back and we'll talk, and I'll tell you, we'll do some type of deal. I'm like, oh man, I gotta get a letter, okay? So I call up the guys back at Beechnut, okay? A purchasing guy that I knew, okay? You know, where we used to work with. Granted, we were different because we were the German baby food company who bought the cereal plant, but, you know, we knew everybody that worked at the Beechnut. So anyway, I'll take you the guy named Dick Dresser, and I go, Dick, I said, I'll tell you what, could you send me a letter that says that Beechnut will buy my products, okay, here in the future? And, you know, he goes, Walt, he goes, are you nuts? He says, he goes, you have no business, you have no business, and okay, so I'm going to take company letterhead and basically write that you're going to be a supplier to us, you know, X amount. He goes, okay, they'll fire me if they find out, like, you know what I'm saying? I'll tell you what, Dick was a good guy, though. About 2 days later, up pops this letter from Beechnut saying that, like, you know, granted, like, you know, he worded it enough that he could kind of skirt, but that was good enough for George. I go, George, I go, here it is. I'll tell you what, from that point on, he was my biggest supporter. Okay, we did a development loan. I think it was more of a grant than anything else with him. And then what he did, he took me down to North Star Bank at the time. Okay, and a guy named Hugh Flynn, and I got an SBA loan. Okay, so he goes to Hugh. He says, listen, he goes, I'll do all the soft costs. You know, meaning, you know, no hard assets. And Hugh, if you can do the equipment through an SBA loan, you know, which I used to think, geez, I mean, I think, what's the risk? I mean, sure. I tell you what, the government used to back it by 90%. You know, Bankley had 10% risk, but still, startup companies, you know, better than now, forget about it. You know, they don't want you to build it. But, sure. You know, he went ahead and did it, like, you know, and between George's loan, the bank's loan, and my wedding money, and I think the total, let's see, George gave me $45,000, okay? The bank gave us $90,000 for equipment. And I got married, you know, and I tell you the truth that my wife was Italian, so we had 400 people at this wedding. You know, she has 1,000. It was like ridiculous, like, you know. So I don't know. I think I might have $4 grand of wedding money or something like that. Like, and we took it all, just dumped it right in there. And yeah, so that was the first stage.
That was the initial seed that you had. So as I'm listening to you, it sounds like what I'm hearing is there was a certain amount of resilience that was there, because if you had taken that first, you know, the first bank that you went to, initially it didn't sound that you say you ripped your business plan apart. So you had already faced some disappointment, but you pressed through, and that is kind of, again, what I'm hearing from different entrepreneurs is that there's that resilience that's there. You had some collaboration. You absolutely had some persuasion, because you were able to get that letter from Beechnut. Yeah. So all those things seem to combine to really, like I say, create that seed that you were then able to plant and move forward from there. So after you kind of got the thing, where a question that I often hear from entrepreneurs is, you know, when do you get that co-founder? When do you get that person? When do you get that team? When did you start building your team?
Well, I mean, actually, right out of start gauge. Okay, you know, I was able to get these, you know, this money and kind of sit there and say, okay, like, you know, now I can get started, like, you know. But you know, it was basically just me, and I kind of knew that, you know, you needed other people. So the guy that was my boss, back at the company that I used to work for, he was Vice President of Scientific Affairs. Okay, he was a PhD. Okay, Dr. Ram Chowdhury. And I'll tell you, he lived down in Connecticut, which that's where the headquarters was. Had a beautiful house and a golf course and stuff, married, had a kid. You know, he was like 40, I want to say 42 years old. So I'm 28, you know, he was my boss. And, you know, he calls me up one day and he said the company, you know, the company that I used to work for was going to be sold off, parts of it, to Mead Johnson. And even though he was Vice President of Scientific Affairs, they told him that, you know, he's probably not going to continue forward. So he's like, you know, so he's just telling me this stuff, and I'm going, wow. And this is about, again, like, you know, I left in '85, took a year to write a business plan, got the money. So this is about a year later, but we talked back and forth a lot, like, you know what I'm saying? And so I go, Ram, you know, I go, you know, hey, why don't you come up and join me in this business? And he's like, first of all, he goes, I'm 42, you're 28. He says, you know, I got the family, I got the house and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, we had a couple conversations, and, like, you know, he knew that, you know, he knew about the market, like, you know, because he knew that we were having a tough time getting some products. And I'll tell you the truth, him, I give the most credit. 42 years old, peak of his career, he's a vice president making big money, beautiful house, married, got the kid in school, okay, and he basically packs it up, sells the house, and moves to Troy, to Hoosick Street. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, you know, that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? And I'll tell you, know, they were sleeping on mattresses in the apartment. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I mean, it was crazy. Like, you know, so anyway, so Ram joined me. So I'll tell you, I was a technical guy. Ram was a technical guy, and, you know, I'll tell you, we're talking. We're going, you know, I'll tell you, we really need somebody to do sales. You know, and I'll tell you, there was this guy. He was my age at the time, 28 years old. A guy named Sam Sylvetsky. And I'll tell you what, he was the biggest pain in the ass sales guy he ever wanted in his entire life. He used to call on me back in Manila, okay? Meaning, you know, I'll tell you, he wanted to set up a meeting to talk about various products he could sell. He used to work for Merck, okay? He was selling those fine chemicals. So things like vitamins and minerals and things of that nature, like, you know. And, you know, I'll tell you, I would go, Sam, I'm too busy, I don't have time. But the guy was always persistent all the time. And I'll tell you what, there was one time where I'm walking through the warehouse, and again, I think we have a GMP type of facility. You got to wear whites and stuff like that. I'm walking through the warehouse, and I turn, I look down the aisle, and there's a guy in a business suit. I'm like, what the heck is a guy in a business suit doing in the warehouse? I take a look, and yep, there's Sam walking up and down the aisles. So I go down, I go, Sam, I go, how did you even get in the building? He goes, well, he says, I was driving by, the loading dock door was open, I figured I'd just come in, because I wanted to see what you guys were buying, so maybe I could kind of get in or something like that. But that kind of stuck in my head. So I said, okay, I go, Ram, I'll tell you what, I think I know a sales guy, like, you know. So again, I tell you, he lived in Connecticut, I'll tell you, he lived in Stamford, Connecticut, like, you know, he had a good job at Merck. He was a young guy, but he had a very good job at Merck. His wife worked, I'll tell you what, she was head of purchasing for, I want to see, TJ Maxx or something like that. They had a nice condo, you know, just kind of starting out, you know, 20-something years old, but they're doing well. So, so I tell him what I'm doing, like, you know, we have a couple telephone calls, and he's like, geez, he goes, I don't know, he goes, I'll tell you the truth, he says, you know, like, I'm kind of liking it, he says, but I don't think my wife's going to be on board with this. You know what I'm saying? So I said, hey, I think let me go down and we'll have dinner, and I'll talk to her. You know what I'm saying? I mean, what the heck, you know? I mean, I tell you, I really didn't know her, but I'll talk to her.
Sure,
you know?
sure.
So I think we went down there, and then I gave him my Mr. and Mrs. Norman speech.
Tell us about the Mr. and
Mrs. Norman, okay, like my Mrs. Norman speech. And basically, it's like, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Normal live the normal life, which is nothing wrong with that. You probably went to school. You graduated, like, you know, you got a job, you worked your way up, you had kids, you bought a house, and then you're retired, like, you know, and that's all good, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. But if you're looking to do something different, you know, than that, well then, you know, here's an opportunity, like, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, first thing she goes to me, she goes, okay, well, I'll tell you what, so I'll tell you, where are you located? I go, Schenectady, New York. And she goes, where is that? And, you know, she takes out this atlas and she goes, where is Schenectady? and I go, S, it's right there, you see it? She goes, holy mackerel. You know, because she was from Boston, you know, then she moved to Stanford, Connecticut. So, I mean, like, you know, Schenectady, she didn't even know where Schenectady was. You know, she's like, I don't know where Schenectady was. But again, I give them credit, like, you know, another people that they sold everything, sold the place, and they moved up here. So then there was 3 of us, okay? And then one more was that my father, okay? So, you know, I think we moved into the World War I Army Depot in the Rotterdam Industrial Park, like, you know, vintage Army World War I depot. And I'll tell you, we're renovating the building and stuff, and I got equipment coming for the lab, for the manufacturing, small space and stuff like that. But I'll tell you what, we're kind of still running low on some cash, like, you know what I'm saying? You know, to do some building renovations and stuff, okay? And I knew I needed some money just to kind of pay some additional light bills. So, you know, it wasn't, we're at 0, but I said, geez, you know, I'll tell you, I can't spend all this money just doing building renovation. So I go to my father, and again, like, I worked for the same company for 30 years, and I told him that I was, you know, going to do this, and, like, you know, we talk about it every once in a while, and I tell you, he would give me the advice, don't do it, you'll wreck your career. You know what I'm saying? He goes, you're doing really well right now. He says, and again, this is a guy that worked for the same company for 30 years, so, you know, he's more of, you know, marching up the ladder versus doing stuff like this.
Absolutely.
So I go, Dad, I go, I'll tell you what, can you lend me $10,000? He's like, oh my God, $10,000, you know. I mean, I'll tell you what, we weren't poor, but we certainly were not rich.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, he goes, geez, he goes, 10 grand. I go, yeah. I go, give me 10 and I'll give you stock. He goes, stock? What stock? There's no company, there's no this, there's no that, there's no that, I go. On and on and on. So, you know, I think that after about a week of going back and forth, and, you know, he comes to me and says, all right, he says, I'll tell you, I'll give you the 10 grand. He goes, you gonna pay me back? I go, I swear I'll pay you back. I go, but please, take some stock too. I'll give you some stock. Like, you know. So anyway, that was the 4 shareholders.
So those were your 4. That was your
and that
dream
was
team.
Yeah. Well, that was 3. You know, he was kind of the silent guy, but
yeah.
But that was it. That's how we got started there.
And that gave you your seat again too. And it sounds like the people that it's important as you're building a team that the people that you surround yourself with are people that share the vision. I'm kind of giggling because you were just stretching out there. And it sounds as if the folks that you surrounded yourself with folks, I mean, my dad's right here in the audience, so I can vouch for fathers that absolutely will go to the wall for you. But it sounds like you built a team of people, so it's important as you're building a team, as an entrepreneur, to find folks that really share the vision that you have, or are as passionate. There was something that a term that you talked about when we spoke the other day about being all in. Yeah. And I want to go back to your story, but talk about the concept of being all in.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, once you make the jump, like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of like, you know, I think it's hard to kind of put the toe in the water type of thing, where you kind of say, well, I think I'm going to test it, and then, you know, if it looks like it's going, then I'll go, you know. You pretty much have to go all in if you're going to do it. And you know, again, I'll tell you, I quit my job, you know. I mean, I basically, in that studio apartment, I'll tell you what I did is I got a credit card and I paid the rent on the credit card, and then once that ran out, I would pay the minimum on that credit card, I got another credit card and pay the rent. I just kept going on and on. I think by the time I got done, I think I had like 5 credit cards going at the same time. That's a whole other story I'll tell you about how that all ended up too. Like, you know. But yeah, you know, I mean, I tell you what, you got to be all in. And I tell you what, you take a look at those other 2 guys. I mean, you know, getting Rand, peak of his career, PhD. He's got a big time job. I mean, you know, he sells it all and basically follows me, who I'm like, you know, 20 years younger than him. He's my boss. Sam, you know, I mean, I tell you, I know him, you know, through work, but I didn't know that, you know, that much. You know, again, they're doing well. He picks up and just, you know, drops in and stuff like that. So you got to sit there and, you know, I mean, you know, that's what you got to do. But after a while, but I'll tell you what, you don't, but you know, I'll tell you, you do it because you're excited about the idea and you think, but then once you're in and once it's going, and not always things might not go like you planned, like, you know what I'm saying? Well, at that point, it just gets to be a pride thing. Okay. Like, you know,
you have to make it happen.
Yeah, because you don't want to be a loser, because you look around.
Right.
Like, you know, let's say in my case, okay, so I was like 28, you know, going on 30 years old, and, you know, my friends, I'll tell you, they're already buying nice cars.
Sure.
You know, they're already starting to look at their first house. And I think I'm living in this little dirt apartment, like, saying, oh no, I'm starting a business and stuff.
Sure.
So I don't want to be viewed as like the loser, like, you know what I mean? So at that point, you just want to keep face almost, like, you know what I'm saying?
No, one of the things that you mentioned is, once you've made, so you've got your team, you've got your seed, you are all in, and yet, and still. And this seems again to be something that the successful entrepreneurs, the successful business owners, those folks that are building something that there's a legacy in place, or a business model that's in place, there are obstacles that you overcome. And I know you shared that there was a time that you faced an obstacle. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my business plan, okay, I basically felt that, I'll tell you, once we had our plant done, okay, that I'll tell you, we'd get our first order like in 6 weeks, okay. So this is now, I'll tell you what, we're kind of ready to go. Let's call it April of 1987. So we're ready to go. We got our little factory, our little lab. We got our little offices. We're ready to roll. Sam's out there doing a sales pitch, like, Fast forward from April to, let's see, October of '87. I think we don't have an order. So not only was it 6 weeks, it wasn't 6 months either. Like, all right, and basically, our rent is like $1,200 a month, okay? Not to mention, phone and electric. And, I think I got like $1,400 in the checking account. That's it. No more money, it's done. So I'm sitting there going, okay, what are we going to do here now? And, believe me, we still feel good because we think we're going to make traction, we're going to get some business, but it's just like, wow. So I was like, all right, I call up a friend of mine, okay, and I'll tell you, he used to work for a company called BASF, and which he was selling fine chemicals to vitamins and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what he did, short version is he left and he started a company that knocked off fiber trim, which most people in this room is too young to know what fiber trim is. But it was a diet. It was a diet tablet, okay. And then I'll tell you what he did. He private labeled it and he sold it to private drugstores. Well, okay, which there still was back then. Now there's not many around. Any event, he did a nice little quick hit in a short period of time. So I call him up. I go, John. I go, tell you, can you lend me $10,000? Like, I was always big on the 10 grand. I go, hey, can you lend me $10,000? Can you lend me $10,000? Again, same thing. He's like, oh, $10,000. He goes, what's going on? I said, John, I got like $1,200 in the checking account. Okay, but I'm telling you, I think we can make it. He goes, well, I'll tell you, why don't you come on down? He lived 2 hours south of here. He goes, okay, why don't you come on down? We'll talk about it. I said, okay. We go down there. We go out drinking all night to 4 o'clock in the morning, like, crash on his couch, I tell you, they got like the one eye open at like 10 o'clock in the morning, like, and I'll tell you, he comes out of his, he goes out of his bedroom and he's got a paper bag. He goes, here. I go, what's this? He goes, 10 grand. I open it up. There's hundreds and fifties in there. $10,000. I go, John, I'll tell you want like an agreement, like a loan agreement, or, I'll tell you how much interest you want back. He goes, I'll tell you what, are you going to pay me back? I go, yeah, I'll pay it back. I'm hoping, geez, I hope I can pay it back. I go, yeah, I'll pay you back. I go back up, okay, the next week, I'll tell you, we get our first order for $68,000. 2 days later after that, we get another order for like, $50,000 next week, and it just boom, 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 starts to go. Fast forward now, that was October of '87, May of 1988. I go to the bank, I cash a check for $10,000. I tell them I want it in 50s and 100s. Okay, that was back before you had to sign a form. Now you have to sign a form. Back then you could just walk in, give them a check, say, okay, give me 10 grand. Okay, I took the 10 grand. I kept the paper bag in my drawer. Open it up, put it back in the same paper bag, drove back down there. This time I bought drinks. We're back up at 4 o'clock in the morning. But the reason why I like to tell that story is because I'll tell you, this is the key, for all startups, what I'm saying? So my story is not a unique story, is that the line between success and failure is that fine, okay? So, I mean, here we are, like, basically, $1,200 from not being here, 27 years later, sell a place for $657 million,
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, it's crazy, but that's how fine that line is.
But, and what I again, what I keep hearing, and I'm a visual person, so I've always got analogies, and it sounds, like I said to you, it's like a rubber band. And so the rubber band is stretching and stretching and stretching, and it's not working, and you've got months with no sales, and you're still believing the dream. You've got your team that's, I mean, any of those people could have bailed out at any time.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to you chose people who had your vision. And the rubber band stretched, and when it finally released, it came back, and as you say, it generated what you were able to accomplish in the sale last year. But the other thing that vision that you had created a culture at Fortitech. I think it started with your initial core, the dream team, but you were able to build a very unique culture that trickled right down. So tell us about that. Tell us about the culture that you had.
Well, you know, I'll tell you what, we were big in, you know, basically empowering people, like, you know, bringing them part of the process. And, you know, and I'll tell you the truth, what I mean by empowering people is basically let them make the decisions. Like, you know, drive the decision process down the chain as close as possible. Meaning, like our salespeople, I'll tell you what, we did a business sale, like, you know, so our customers would be like Nestle's and Coca-Cola and Abbott Laboratories, and, you know, you can pretty much name the food and pharmaceutical company, and I'll tell you what, we did business with them, okay? But our salespeople would be doing these deals, which could be anywhere from 50,000 to 50 million, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, I'll tell you, we would empower them to basically do those deals, okay? So, you know, where a lot of business would be, well, let me go talk to my manager and I'll go get this approval, okay? Basically what we did is we not only did it in sales, but we did it whether it's on the shop floor and the production, okay? Let them be part of that decision process. And basically what that did, and, you know, I mean, I think this was not something that I was like, boy, I tell you what, I have this brilliant idea, that's what we're gonna do. No, okay, we just felt that, okay, hey, you know, let's get everybody involved here. And over the years of basically just getting everybody involved, I'll tell you what I started to realize is, geez, you know, the more we let people do stuff, boy, the more that they feel that they're part of this thing, because they see their decision, I'll tell you, it makes an impact, like, you know. And I'll tell you what that we also found happens, okay, is that it gave us a great velocity of business. And I'll tell you what I mean by the velocity of business is the speed of business that we did. So meaning that, I'll tell you, if we're talking to Nestle's and I'll tell you, we're finishing up a project or finish up a deal, and our salespeople are going, yeah, here's the price, here's what we can do, and here's the thing, and they can give it to them right then, thing's done, okay? Our competitor was like, okay, well, we have to go back up, we got to get that approved, and that took like a week later, and it came back down. By that time, forget it, it's done, you know? So basically, our velocity of business, whether it was in production, whether it was in sales, whether it was in the laboratory stuff, as you empower and make the decision process closer down the line, it also speeds things up, because they don't have to wait for people to tell them what to do. They already know what to do. And then again, it just forms this culture where everybody now feels that they own the place, that they're part of it. They see their decision. Like, you know, so when we work with a Vitamin Water, which, you know, believe me, we started working with them, talk about a garage. Okay, like, you know, believe me, the people, the technical people that were doing formulas with them, the sales people, the people that were making the products out there in the warehouse, believe me, they took great pride to see like Vitamin Water go from nothing to end up on every shelf to be bought by Coke for $3 billion.
Right, right. Now, the velocity of business that you talked about, was that a part of, you know, part of the story that I love is, here's this company that is a homegrown company from Schenectady, and at some point, your velocity increased to a point where you went global. You know, you went national, and then you went global. And how did that happen?
Well, I mean, you know, we're doing pretty good in the U.S. You know, we're growing stuff, okay? But the customers that we had, okay, I'll tell you what, they were global customers. Okay, and as we started doing more business, okay, they were coming to us and say, geez, you know, I mean, I'll tell you the truth, that if you're going to start to be a strategic type supplier, okay, you know, I think we need you to supply us on a greater basis. So, you know, this was really the drive. Because to be honest with you, I mean, I think we had probably a $30 million business at that point going in the U.S.
Sure.
And you know something, by that time, I'll tell you, I was making a pretty good living.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, if I could have just stamped everything and said, okay, everything could be the same right now, I'll tell you, I would have done that and then called it a day.
Sure.
Okay, but I'll tell you, we knew if we didn't keep moving forward, that we'd end up going backwards.
Okay.
So basically, our customer base was really what the draw was. And so we were like, okay, well, so then we went to Mexico, okay, because our customers were in Mexico, and our same customers were in South America, so we ended up in South America. And we just kept platforming, like, we went to Europe, then we're in Asia, like, we just kind of kept rolling from there.
Sure. So it almost like the customer, the demand drew you into other countries. I want to ask you, you had that experience of obviously being an employee, decided, saw a niche for yourself that you'd be able to create something that wasn't there, built this business. The business is scaling in a marvelous fashion. So as you are looking at the company, what would you say is one of, you talked about some things that were surprising, but what was something that absolutely delighted you about being a business owner?
Well, I mean, again, like, when you get to a certain point, okay, in the thing, you don't realize this at first, okay, but, when you look at the parking lot and you see, like, new cars in the parking lot, and you hear about kids going to college, and, their parents are paying for college, and then you hear about the stuff, that basically, like, all the employees are doing, and you sit there and go, wow, they're doing this because, we got this business going, you know what I'm saying? That's something where, I'll tell you, you just sit back once in a while and you shake your head, you're like, wow, how could that even be possible?
Right.
How could I possibly be, okay, responsible for that type of thing? Especially where I came from, which I wasn't really a responsible guy, if you know what I'm saying. Not at all, not at all.
So that was something. So at some point, you've got this company. It's 27 years old. You're tooling along. Like you said, you had actually reached a point, even when you were national, that you were like, if I could just kind of rubber stamp this thing and make it happen. You had achieved beyond your dreams. You had done more than you probably had imagined that you were going to do when you started out. Was there a point where you just said, well, you're kind of looking around, you and your partners, and saying, I think we've done what we came here to do.
Yeah, keep in mind that as we're going through years, okay, and now when we ended up, Ram at this point is now, he's not 40-something, he's 72 years old.
Sure.
My father is 90 years old.
Right.
Like, we did this thing, and then, me and Sam were like, I'm 57 now, we, did this thing at 56, so Sam's 56 too. And I mean, you're going through this process, and you're like, okay, well, at some point, there's got to be an end game here. And I'll tell you what, when you do a startup company, okay, it's basically like dog years, meaning that, like, 1 year is like 7 years. Like,
I love it.
So people ask me, they go, I'll tell you, how long have you been working? I tell you, it's not 27 years. I've been working for 50 years, okay, because that's what it takes out of you.
Sure.
So, it gets to be a point where, after a while, that, like, I'll tell you, you have to be 110% in all the time, right? Like, and I'll tell you, what I was finding is that, maybe I was 90% in.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And it was just a matter of, after a while, you just sit there and go, okay, like, how much more running the world do you want to do?
Sure.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But, but then you also have to think about, okay, well, there's been a bunch of people that built this, believe me. Like, I didn't build it, We had 600 people build this place, you know what I'm saying? So, you also got to think about, okay, well, I'll tell you, you want to have the right fit if you were going to do a transaction. And, because we were a private company, we were globally based, okay, we had business all over the world. We dealt with every food and pharmaceutical company. I tell you, believe me, I was fielding calls every single day.
Sure.
For years. People want to know if, if we had any interest, we'd be getting all kinds of, stuff like that. So, so what we did first, okay, is, I'll tell you, we actually did a private equity deal. And that was mainly for, to help with estate planning for Ram and my father. So we took a minority piece of the business, we sold it, okay, the Trilantica Capital Partners. And then the thought process was, okay, and again, I'll tell you what, those proceeds were basically right to the shareholders. So this was not to build more plants or something, no.
Sure. This
transaction just went right to the shareholders. Okay, so we did that. So, the idea was that I just said, okay, maybe I got another 3-4 years in me, maybe 5 on the outset or something like that, or I could do some transition. But our largest competitor, a company called DSM, which They're a big Dutch company. They're about $13 billion. Their human nutrition business was about $4.5 billion, $5 billion, which that's where we would fall into. Okay, and I tell you, they were doing the same thing that we were doing. So you know, they had a section of that. Okay, but I mean, to be honest with you, back when we started, they were the big dogs. But I mean, you know, we beat them to death, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, you know, so and then made the market even broader.
Sure.
And you know, so we felt that was, you know, maybe we would look at stuff. And actually, 5 years ago, before we actually did the transaction, their CEO called me up and said, "Listen," he goes, "Okay, how about we just have dinner?" I said, "Okay, we'll have dinner." So we had dinner, and he talked about his vision for this, you know, for this market, and I talked about my vision, and those two visions were like this. And basically, what that did was every year, though, okay, he'd call me up and say, "Let's have dinner again."
Right.
Okay, and every year it seemed to be that the vision was like this. Okay, well, over the last 2 years we had this dinner. Okay, all of a sudden his vision was here, my vision was here. It was unbelievable. His vision started to come over here.
Sure.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So, and I'll tell you, that was important because the biggest thing we wanted, that if we were going to do anything, and I'll tell you, we weren't looking to do anything, you know, because we just did this private equity deal, we think we're good, we're going to move on. But it would have to be the fit. We want to make sure it was a good fit for the business, because again, a lot of people built this place,
Sure.
and I don't think that they want to see a bad fit and have the place go down after after somebody bought it.
Absolutely.
So the money wasn't the driving factor. You know, believe me, money's important.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you, I could have got the money in five, 6 different places.
So it sounds like when I hear you saying, it's almost like a continuum, because it took a lot of vision, planning, and care in the beginning to start this thing up, to get the right people in place, to build, create that seed that enabled you to get started the way that you wanted to. And then even as you began to think, okay, so maybe we're going to, and you just call it a transaction, it was still a matter of a vision, because you wanted to create something, a legacy that was, you walk away, but you really have left something. You talked about it almost being the business model is what you wanted to be in place, so that even once you did whatever it is that you were going to do, there was still something that was looked very much like what it was.
Yeah. Well, and really, I'll tell you the truth, when we did the transaction, I'll tell you, what they bought is they bought a business model. I'll tell you, we had no patents. Okay, you know, we had no real special equipment. You know, we had some things that we tweaked and stuff like that.
Sure.
But it wasn't like that we were a drug manufacturer, that we had some big patent product, and that's what our business was about. No, what we did is that we had a business model. We made a business model to make customized fortification products, okay? 10,000 different formulas, okay? And be able to do it in a quality manner, do it with a good velocity of business, bring an incredible amount of other value to our customers with that. So it's really an overall business model that they had to buy. So it's certainly important that whatever they bought, they have to keep that model in place.
Oh, sure.
And kind of run it. And that's what, I wanted to make sure that's what we're going to have.
I want to leave a little bit of time so folks can ask questions, but I wanted to just touch briefly on mentorship, because I know that you had some, and I know that you are still doing some consulting, almost really in a mentorship kind of a role, in a sense. Would you say that that is, for people that are coming up or in business, that mentorships are really key?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think it depends, you know what I'm saying? You know, like people reach out to me, you know, businesses reach out to me, but, you know, the first thing I tell them is that, you know, number one, you know, like I don't know your business, you know what I'm saying? So, and I'll tell you the truth, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm God's gift to the business world, I have all the answers. I basically don't.
Right.
But I can kind of tell you about what my experience was,
Sure.
and whether maybe I had a situation that you might have, and this is what I did with my situation. Now, my situation might not be quite the same, but maybe you can take a piece of that from that. Okay. So that's how I approach it. And I mean, I'll tell you what, kind of coming up, like, you know, that was the types of stuff that, you know, basically I did. I actually had an advisory board of some very smart guys. They were all corporate guys. That went horribly wrong, okay? You know what I'm saying? Because where I was, okay, you know, which we were still a very new kind of young company and stuff like that. And again, you know, I mean, you know, these were good guys. They were smart. They were very successful guys. They all had very successful careers, big jobs and stuff. but you know, they weren't not the entrepreneur startup guys. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you know, some of the stuff would be just like, you know, I mean, it just didn't bring value. Where there'd be other guys, and I think I talked about this, Paul Schaefer, this one guy, that who was, you know, actually I met him at the RPI Incubator Center. Okay, he was with a company and they had like 20 of them, and you know, back in the day now. So you know, this is old technology. But back in the day when calculators had LED screens and stuff like that, like, you know, I don't know, they invented some type of technology with that, and it got sold, and you know, they all made some money, like, you know, so. But Paul, he was a serial startup guy, that's why, you know, he'd take that money and dump it in another startup.
Right.
Okay, and so, I mean, he brought value, and the biggest value was the story that, you know, he talks about Rocky Marciano and Jersey Joe Walcott in a fight, like, you know, heavyweight fight, okay? And, you know, they're fighting for the title, okay? And, you know, Jersey Joe was a champ at that point, like, you know. And basically, I'll tell you what, the Rocky Marciano was going through 12 rounds. He's lost every single round, every single round. And Paul used to sit there, because he had it up on his wall, he used to show the picture of this Rocky like this, bloody, both eyes are closed, okay, coming down. He goes, yeah, he goes, the manager in the 11th round said, don't go back out. No, he's going back out. And he goes, I'll tell you, what do you think he did? I go, I don't know. He just kept punching.
Just kept punching.
Just keep punching. And he goes, you know, he goes, as you start up your business, you're going to come up with stuff. You're going to be bloody. You're going to be so bloody you're going to think you can't even see, but you just got to keep punching. And guess what happened? Okay, the 13th round, he knocked him out. It was the only round he won.
The
only one that counted, you know. So, and like, you know, in hindsight, you know, when I go back and think about $1,200 in the bank and stuff,
absolutely,
and just keep punching, you know, he was 100% correct, like, right, you know what I'm saying? Right. So, I mean, a guy like that, I got value because he's been through the trench, like, you know what I'm saying? Right. So early on, you know, somebody who's been through the trench probably gives you a little bit more, you know, stuff to work with, even though it wasn't technical, it wasn't how to do a financial statement, right, it wasn't talking about the market. No, he's just like, hey, just keep punching, man. Right. That's all you got to do. So, you know, that's the type of stuff.
That's what I hear you saying is, you know, have a vision, be able to solve, you know, you're looking to solve a problem. In the beginning, get the right people around you, the right fit, build the right culture, keep the vision strong, you know, don't let anything stop you, overcome, but keep punching is the moral of the story. So I just wanted to open it up for questions. Is there anybody that has anything that they'd like to ask? Go ahead.
You mentioned you took some private equity
at
a certain point. So after you had some liquidity, after that deal's done, how does it feel going into the office at that point? You're at the top of the mountain at that point, I would assume. You've got some serious cash in your pocket and you're still going. Yeah. Did you feel like you talked about, like, at times you felt like, well, only 90% in. Did that have anything to do with it?
It probably affected a little bit. I mean, still at that point, I'll tell you the truth, we knew that there was an end game. And, you know, I'll tell you, if you're going to bring the private equity guys in, I mean, like, you know, I'll tell you what, they have expectations. Like, you know, I'll tell you what, they got to have 20% a year growth, which for us wasn't a big issue since, you know, we were, you know, that's been our growth rate. We were rolling along. So, I mean, you know, that keeps you motivated too, meaning that, like, you know, I'll tell you what, we used to have quarterly meetings, okay, so we never had those type of quarterly meetings, and they want to know how it's going, type of thing, you know. So again, you know, ego drives you, you know, so you want to make sure, you know, you're telling people you're successful. So that almost kept me going a little bit, to be honest with you. So versus, you know, pulling back, like, you know what I mean, you know, maybe for a week, like, you know, maybe in the first time where I actually saw my bank account and I looked and I was like, holy crap, when they wired the money in, I was like, that's unbelievable. Like, you know, okay. Now granted, that was only a fraction that ended up the bigger game, but I was still, at that point, I'm still like, wow, that's unbelievable. But, you know, I think it was, you know, I'll tell you, the private equity thing for us was the right move because we didn't need it. Like, you know, so it wasn't like we didn't, you know, basically, I'll tell you, I think we just needed it for shareholders, sure, you know, which a lot of times is not the case. You know, people need it for different reasons.
Anybody else?
So you related and talked about some of the difficulties starting up and before you got going, and those are, everybody can understand those and relate to those, but what are some of the things that you found difficult, or what were some troublesome areas once you were successful, once you were doing 50 million or something like that?
Well, you know, and I'll tell you, that's the thing. I mean, you know, I'll tell you what, first of all, that, you know, there never seemed to be a level that you felt like, oh, okay, well, we were all done, we got there. No, it was always something, you know, it always was like, well, we got to keep going, because the market, since we were told a market-driven company, meaning that, you know, I'll tell you what, we would create products based on what the market or our customers wanted. So it was always like, well, they need more, so we have to keep going. We got to go build a plant here, we got to go service their needs there. So I think the challenges of basically addressing that, like when I'll tell you what, we decided that we're going to start, I'll tell you, globally platforming. You know, people told me, I mean, I had many people say, well, you know, your size business, which I think we started at maybe $30 million to start bringing stuff offshore. They said, well, you know, I'll tell you, you're going to have to leverage yourself to do that. You're going to have to borrow money and stuff. You can't take your culture that you have here, that you drive, you know, that's what they said, you know, that I drive, and then be able to drop it in another country and then build a total organization on it, which we do. So, I mean, I think we had business units, meaning that, you know, we had like a vice president, and we had, you know, R&D, sales, everything. They were complete business units, not plants. People would say, there's no way you can bring that culture like that. Like, you know, I mean, that's a hurdle. You have to be able to do it. We were able to do it, like, you know, but it was like, it kind of never stopped. I mean, just in general though, okay, I'll tell you the truth, that like I used to have the big three, okay, which I used to call the big three. Three things that I hated. I hated IT, okay, you know, like I always made sure somebody else was in charge of IT, and half the time I didn't want to know about IT. Because just to keep up with the business systems on a fast-growing business was a pain in the butt, okay? HR, okay? You know something? You know, people ask me, I'll tell you what do you miss the most, and I'll tell you, what do you miss the least? I'll tell you, the thing I miss the most is the people, because they're great people, and the thing I miss the most, or don't miss the most, are the people. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'll tell you though, but I was an HR convert, okay, you know, like I thought personnel early on was a waste of time, you know, okay, and that's until I hired this one HR person named Joanne Murphy, okay, and I'll tell you what, she changed and shed a whole lot of light on HR for me, and boy, let me tell you what, when you got a good HR group, then you don't have to worry about it, and for me that was just like, but that was an issue. I had to get that through my head that HR had a value, and now that they had a value, that they had a seat that sat right next to me right here after a while. Nothing moved without me checking with her. And I'll tell you what, then insurance. Again, for us it was a little bit more of a challenge because we got, you know, I think we're putting stuff in people's bodies. Okay, so people are eating it, you know, and, you know, that can be a challenge. Okay, so those are the type of challenges that, you know.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
You know, early on you talked about one of the big steps early on was your empowerment of your employees. And my question to you is, how did you maintain your vision and the quality of your vision when you empower somebody to make decisions on the fly? Sometimes they may not have the same belief system that you might have. How did you ensure that that was going to be carried out in that decision-making process?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what, when we let them make a decision, okay, there was a bandwidth, you know what I'm saying? Meaning, here's the bandwidth, like, you know what I'm saying? And basically, in that bandwidth, that's you. Which probably covered most of it, like, you know? So what it did, it basically, you know, if it got outside that bandwidth, okay, meaning if there was something going crazy, like, you know, or, you know, somebody was going off the reservation, okay, you know, then, I'll tell you, they knew they had to come back, okay? Now, having said that, I mean, I'll tell you, my biggest part of my job, which then goes down to other types of managers, is to instill a certain type of, you know, I'll tell you, business ethics. You know, you lead by example, and especially when you're running the globe, okay? You know, the U.S. not so bad, the rest of the world parts of it, you know, there's some crazy stuff that goes on out there. Yeah. So, you know, I'll tell you what, the business ethics, if they feel they own the business, right? They want to do the right thing for the business. So that's part of the culture, like, you know. So actually, you know, if they feel that, like, you know, that what they do has an impact on them, okay, very surprising, okay, how much people step up, and that, you know, you don't have too much of a problem. I'm not going to say, you know, we never had it, but I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think with the right structure and the right empowerment, that, you know, people end up doing the right thing. And, you know, the culture, after a while, I'll tell you what, it gets addictive, you know.
Anyone else?
I had a question, going back to the time period before you quit your job.
Yeah.
When you had the decision, saying I had a great idea. When did you start expressing that to other people? Did you keep that close, you know, close to yourself, or?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you know, like I talked about, you know, starting a business. You know, like I said, I was looking at the hardware stores for a while. I thought I was going to be the king of hardware. You know, so nothing wrong with being the king of hardware, but it just didn't turn out to be what I was going to do. So, you know, so I would talk to people about it. Like, you know, like, I mean, I'll tell you what, I would read magazines all the time about business startups. Okay, like I'll tell you what, there was a magazine back then called Venture Magazine, which I don't think is around anymore. But there's Inc. I used to look at that, and then, you know, I would actually carry that magazine around in my briefcase. I'd be telling people, look at this business right here. What do you think about that? Look how good this guy did. Like, you know, so I started kind of really thinking about it to the point where when I finally saw an opportunity, you know, I had it in my head, and this is the biggest part, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'll tell you what, like if you got a job and, you know, it's paying the bills, and it's paying the car payment, it's doing stuff, and like, you know, you're going to launch off and say, okay, that's going to stop. You know, you got to, you know, I mean, I tell you got to be a little bit nutty, to be honest with you. I mean, truly. I mean, because anybody in their right mind would sit there and say, well, logically, you know, you probably shouldn't do that. With zero income coming in, you know, I said, oh yeah, credit card, I'll pay it back someday. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so, I mean, yeah, but I talked about it, and, you know, I mean, I was always thinking about it, like, you know, I was always doing stuff, you know.
Anyone else?
Quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned before about your dinners with the other CEO and
Yeah.
how his strategy, vision kind of came to your. Sometimes that happens because they actually changed, and sometimes it happens because they're telling you what they want to tell you because
Sure.
they want to get the deal done.
Yep.
Now that you're 6, 8, whatever months post acquisition, what turned out to be the truth?
I think a little bit of both. Okay, I think a little bit of both. I mean, you know, certainly they want to do the right thing because, you know, they understood what they were buying. You know, they bought a business model. I mean, all our people, you know, like the guy that's now running it, you know, combined business, which is over $600 million. Okay, was our chief operating officer. So, you know, he runs it. All the regional guys that head up all the regions were all our guys. Like, you know what I'm saying? Pretty much it's all our people and very starts the thing. So I mean, from that standpoint, they want to do the right thing because they know the business model and stuff, and they talk about it. But the problem is sometimes they can't help themselves. That's the problem. Okay, meaning that, like, you know, they'll just start doing things. It's not intentional. They don't even know what the ramifications are, and that's why, you know, I'm still a consultant there. Like, you know, they asked me if I would stay on to be a consultant. And all my job is just to yell bullshit every once in a while. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so when they come up with something, oh, well, we have to do this for a reason. Bullshit, we do. You know what I'm saying? Stop. You know, now, I mean, again, you know, do they listen? I tell you what, I still have some street cred there, like, you know, but again, it just comes from so many type of direction. So, I mean, you know, they bought this, we put this together to be game changing in the industry. Now it's been about a year and a half now, I guess it's been about a year and a half, okay? It hasn't been game changing yet, okay? Like, you know, I think they're on the cusp of either, you know, being a train wreck moving forward or actually being game changing, like, you know what I'm saying? And it's gonna depend. I mean, believe me, they're trying, but I'll tell you, first of all, it's a European company, okay? A different type of management structure. Everything's by some type of committee. I call it the everybody's in charge and nobody's in charge model. You know what I'm saying? All right, they like to make things much more complicated than they have to be, and they got an awkward type of decision process, like, you know what I'm saying? So under that type of banner, like, you know, we'll have to see. So I think it's probably a mixed bag. I think they're, you know, what they said they're trying to do, but, you know, let's see if they can actually do it.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Who do you think you'd be if you didn't start this whole?
It's a good question. You know,
What do you envision, or, I'm sorry, what would you see yourself doing? What type of person? And second to that, this has nothing to do with business, but how do you enjoy your personal time?
Yeah.
Pastime.
I'll tell you what, the second one's easier than the first. I mean, to be honest with you, I'll tell you what, you're the first person that's ever asked me that question. And you know something, I really never thought about it. I think I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, it would be hard for me to believe that I wasn't in some business. I might have been in that hardware store business. You know what I'm saying? I probably would have been in some business. Okay, it might have not been nutrients and stuff that we did, but I can't believe that I wouldn't have been into something. As far as free time goes, like I'm not a golfer. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so I don't golf. Okay, like like I'm into fishing. I like big duck hunter and stuff like that. I like the outdoor stuff. I'm big into gardening. Like I like to grow plants and stuff like that. I'm big into things like that. I smoke cigars. I drink beer. I drink scotch. That's pretty much.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty much the drill. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, now that I got more time on my hands, okay, as I go through that, okay, I'm like, okay, so I did that on Monday through like Wednesday. Okay, now what am I going to do? So, so I'm kind of like, sorting that part out a little bit. Like, I mean, like I thought I was going to have, like I was going to do just a ton of that. Like, I thought I was going to be the next, like, ESPN fisherman and stuff. But I kind of, believe me, I love fishing and I'm pretty good at doing all types. But I think when you can do it every day, okay, you can't do it every day. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm sitting there going, okay, well, what am I going to do? Like, and then people go to me, oh, what's your next venture? Well, the only problem is that I really don't want to work full time either. So I mean, how can you not work? If you're going to start a venture, you're going to work full time. Matter of fact, you're going to work more than full time.
Right,
So
right.
So I don't know what I'm going to do. But that's what I'm doing in my free time right now.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I did yard work today. That's what I did today.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, I guess that we are complete.
Great. Well, thanks very much.
This has been very cool. Okay, I have one last one.
Yeah.
It's totally nothing to do with business, but
Yeah.
if you were going to be a superhero, who would you be?
Superhero. God. Couldn't imagine myself a superhero. I mean, Superman's always cool. You know what I'm saying? Because he's the ultimate. He has it all.
Yeah.
He's got the speed, the strength,
Vision.
jump, tallest buildings at a single bound type of thing. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, I suppose that.
Okay. All right. Well, with Superman, I guess we are out.
Great.
Thank
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks for.